And if I can come in there and, help people with the things that I've seen so many times, it's just more efficient. And then they don't have to, pay for a full time salary because that's just it. I mean, some of the salaries of some of these positions have gotten to the point where it makes you wonder how businesses stay in business at all. You know, and when, I think what happens a lot of times is most of the time the C-suite level teams are not doing 40 hours of C-level work, right? You do 10 or 15 hours of strategy C-level things, and then you fill in the gaps.
So we have Django, for example. When I
Right.
ask Django questions, it solves it perfectly. I don't need to struggle at all. All the whole MVC is done. Like I think
Yes.
CEO of Microsoft said, Satya said, basically like MVC, like you know, it's done. Like AI can do it. But as soon as you get into this complex, like UI and like complex like flows of data with a synchronous processing or real time, or like we do a lot of real time video analytics, and it struggles with it. Doesn't understand it.
So it can help keep track of those things as we move forward and make sure that everything gets adjusted right. I think you're going to see a lot more project management from AI. There's a lot of integrations in some of these customer or project management platforms. Um, they're just really good at that. How much time is spent in a day on saying, it's we've seen this, in the US, all the Doge. Give me your 5 bullets that you worked on.
Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of What About AI Agents podcast, where we talk everything and anything about AI agents. Today with us we have Tom Altman, who is a fractional CTO. He has been in the technology industry for 25 years, specializing in digital strategy, leading teams, and he co-hosts the Best Motorcycle podcast. So if you're into motorbikes, please check it out. So my first question is, will AI be able to automate high-speed motorcycle driving, like on Autobahn or something like that? Will we be able to automate self-driving 400 kilometers an hour?
Well, if you've seen how bad I drive, I think you'd probably say it would be better than I am.
What do you drive? What motorcycle?
I'm currently riding a 22 Honda Goldwing. So
Mm,
I drive a big couch. It's about as
nice.
comfortable as it gets. This summer, I was fortunate enough to ride across the U.S. from the Midwest to Seattle. So there and back, we did about 5,000 miles. So it was a good trip.
Yeah, that's quite the distance, and I can imagine the scenery is quite beautiful as well.
And AI might not be able to take over the driving, but I'm guessing that it really could help me have found like the best winding roads somewhere along the way, which would be really interesting as the Honda Goldwing on 22 actually has integrated Google Maps. So you're seeing it just like an Android Auto or a CarPlay.
Mm.
You can see where there would be, hey, you're only 7 miles away from a really, really popular road. And while it might not take over the driving, I bet it could help me find the best cheeseburger in Seattle.
Well, that it could do before, but I guess you can now ask it. Well, I mean, how do you feel about self-driving tech in general? I know they're piloting it in China and other places as well. I mean, in US, they're talking about being like fully autonomous, but I guess that's not for like motor vehicles. I mean, not for motorcycles. It's more
They
like
not
for.
not for motorcycles yet, but I have seen a bike that self stays upright itself. So they are
Mm,
working on pieces there. In the U.S., we have some Waymo, which is one of the companies that'll do. There are some driverless taxis in a few cities, so they're just starting. I think it's amazing. I mean, I mean, I think I've seen a statistic that says everyone rates their own driving, and like 75% of the people are better than average. So I think we're terrible drivers. I think we're distracted completely. And when I make some long drives, I would love to take a nap, do some texting, play a game, watch a movie. It seems like a pretty mind-numbing thing for us to be doing, really.
yeah, yeah. I mean, the fact that it's still manual and a lot of people just drive. Like I live in Toronto,
Uh-huh.
and the quality of drivers is just it's remarkable. These people, they are shouldn't be driving. I feel like they should just be replaced by self-driving AIs that like prevent these people from doing what they do. I mean, these people, they just do whatever they want. Really, they don't
Yeah.
care.
And I love cars. I always have. My dad was a mechanic for years of Volkswagens, and so I love cars. But like, I like to drive when I'm driving, but then when I'm not, I don't want to think about it. It would be great to pass that off.
Well, it's fun unless you have to make like a 5 hour road trip, and then you're like we used to go from Toronto to Montreal like about like 15 to 20 times a year,
Yeah,
and that's and back go there and back. It's 500 kilometers. I don't know how many miles that is. I guess like 300 miles. So it's
sure.
not, but it's just it's 5 hours and it's annoying, and you have to stay focused on the road, and if you take breaks, you lose like an hour. So like having an AI, if I could just swap it in and just let it do its thing, and it's such a boring drive. Like
Well, and if all were running AI, right, then they could probably operate at much faster speeds, and you could probably get there much quicker as well. I mean, if they were somehow communicating together, you can see the efficiencies and the speeds and some of these things that would just make that trip
yeah,
seamless.
if they were to outlaw manual driving and just have everything AI, then like the cars would just drive as a swarm, and then they would be able to basically go like 200 kilometers. Why not? And
And I know in the US, like, we have much more, it seems like we have a lot more sprawl. I mean, you have that in Canada as well, but I've always thought too with the automated semi truck driving, like, let's just turn that median into 2 lanes that are let the semis drive on their own there, and it will even be a separate roadway. There's less that's opportunity, because I think their biggest problem would be the idiots in the cars that were driving versus the semis. You see such silly things that happen when people are driving those vehicles. Not
well,
and the car drivers don't understand how slow it takes to maneuver that size of vehicle.
yeah, yeah, and I mean in Toronto too, we have so many of the semis, and on the highway, they don't have like a dedicated lane. I always thought they just need to have like one lane where they all have to be, so they don't block traffic. It's like this whole
Yeah,
thing. Like I mean, there is so much room for innovation improvement in the way that we do driving and the way that we like do automotive things. I feel like yeah,
yeah, it's quite interesting when you think about it. I mean, I know these big trunking companies, they think in terms of tenths of a mile. And in some of these larger companies, a tenth of a mile can be like $1 million in fuel in a year. So when they can even look at the efficiency, if they can increase the fuel efficiency by tenths, then those are millions of dollars that can be saved. And that's real dollars. And it's the same thing, I'm sure, in vehicles. They could be more efficient. They could do more things, and yeah, and then that could be off our checklist of to-dos, right?
yeah, save us time. So, Tom, I guess we can start with your role as a fractional CTO.
Yeah.
Uh, Tell us a little bit about what projects you're working on, what interesting things are going on in your space.
Yeah, and, it varies a little bit. We kind of have three things that we do as fractionals. We work as projects, like you can imagine. We sometimes find ourselves working as an interim, and then we
Mm.
work as a fractional. So interim would be that would be in a spot where maybe they lose someone in a short order and they don't have anyone to fill the slot. Someone resigns, someone quits, some other event happens and they're without a CTO. We can come in, help them keep continuity going, and make sure the business stays running. And then fractional wise, what we do there, and the business owners that I talk to that have had businesses in the past often say, I wish this kind of thing existed before. And they say, because a lot of companies might not need a full-time CTO, or they might not need a full-time CFO because they have good people working at the company. But what they don't have is, 25 years of technology experience, wounds, heals, scars, all these things that I've had over the time that I can implement and help them with on a smaller basis. We kind of sometimes call it part-time C-suite help. And if I can come in there and, help people with the things that I've seen so many times, it's just more efficient. And then they don't have to, pay for a full-time salary, because that's just it. I mean, some of the salaries of some of these positions have gotten to the point where it makes you wonder how businesses stay in business at all. You know, and when, I think what happens a lot of times is most of the time the C-suite level teams are not doing 40 hours of C-level work, right? You do 10 or 15 hours of strategy C-level things, and then you fill in the gaps, and you're overpaying for them to maintain user accounts or manage projects. And it's just, I think that there's other ways that can get done.
Yeah, especially in executive. A lot of smaller companies also need somebody who can help navigate them, things like compliance, things like security certifications, and I don't know if that's what you do, but I would assume that CTO would be partially responsible for that.
As you can imagine, the company that I work for is called Altus. So we have a number of people. So we have people that have a little bit different experience across the board. So some people have more development experience. Some people have more hardware experience. So yeah, I mean, it's just that. Recently I worked with a client that had a cyber event happen to them, and they didn't know what to do. They weren't sure where to go. So we were there just to be kind of that solid rock. Hey, everything's cool. Calm down. Let's just take this one step at a time. We can't prevent the breach that already happened, so let's just take it from here. And then you can start to work on repair, and then preventative maintenance as we go forward. So it's things like that, voice of reason, just that person that's got the knowledge and that can help you. So
Yeah, and I think that's so important, especially if you're a young company, like maybe $500,000 ARR, something like that, and you need some sort of support. In a lot of cases, a lot of these guys, they're great developers. They've built this great tools, but they don't necessarily have the kind of the cap. That's why they give like 7% to Y Combinator to get some of that experience, right? Then you yeah.
Well, and when you build a company and you're building software, you're building it to get the results right then. You don't take into account all these other angles, and then it's just like anything. When you're so close to something, you don't always get you can't objectively speak and think about it. So then security risks come when things scale, and that's where you come in and work on penetration testing and do the things. You do things. You get into habits. Like that's what we do as humans. We're habitual creatures, and we tend to think the things that we did were right, even though we may not have done the right thing. So finding someone that can look at all the angles sometimes is important. I mean, I remember in one of the first companies when I was back in web development, and I deleted like some ridiculous 10 million rows out of a database, and it was like, wow, that was a big mistake. And luckily it was a company that had backups and we backed it up, but you don't make that mistake again when you make it the first time. And I think that's what happens, right? If you've never made the mistake before, it's really hard to see that mistake coming.
Right. And I think there is a lot of fear and there is a lot of uncertainty that's involved, especially when it comes to your reputations and the reputation of your customers. And, people like to overemphasize security and then they get certified. But once you get certified, you don't move as fast. That's one of the things, because you have to go through all this compliance checklists to deliver features. So there is a that's the drawback.
Yeah, and I think you see that. I mean, and security in these certificates are great things, right? I mean, they have good intentions, but some of the best people I've ever known never went to school to program, right? They learned it themselves and they figured it out. They hacked their way through it, and sometimes those are some of the better people. So, I think more sets of eyes on things and is always a good policy when you're thinking about these things too. So, yeah, it's fun though.
Absolutely. And so coming back to the to kind of some of the projects that you've been working on, specifically in Gen AI. So what are some of the use cases that you've been kind of involved in, and what are some of the kind of cool agent applications that you can share with us, or some of the things that you see in this space?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's two pieces. I think getting yourself ready for AI in a company and kind of digging deep. I mean, one of the things that we're working on with a client right now, it's a real estate company, but they also are talking about construction. So what they're trying to do is take their projects from the past and mash up and kind of use AI to say, what would be the best use for this piece of property? Is this property have enough? What have we seen with all the projects? Because they have a bunch of project data from the past, and they're trying to leverage AI so that a lot of the analysis. I think that's where we're going to see a lot of AI in this first few few years is really helping with the analysis. Because again, if we back to the conversation we talked about, human and details are not always the best thing that we can do. And when you start to look at multi-angular, I mean, we as humans can see 3D pretty well, but when you start to think 4D, it gets really hard for us to construct that idea. So when you take a bunch of elements, like you think of real estate and construction, and when you look at how many elements there are, there's many dimensions of this problem. And when you start to look at those in one, it's just really difficult for an Excel spreadsheet to manage that. And I think that's one use of AI that I've seen that's going to really show how it can think and how it can help reason based on data that's been proven. The other piece of it is getting yourself ready for AI, because I think, you hear a lot about the hallucinations, and I think it's funny when I hear people say that, because it's like, this AI is dumb, because it didn't know, what a purple orangutan looked like. And I'm like, well, it's garbage in, garbage out, right? If you don't tell it, it's got one job. AI has one job, and that's give you an answer. So if you don't give it enough information, it's going to give you an answer. It's just like if I asked a kindergartner how to develop a website, they're going to have some really wild ideas, and they're going to give me an answer. But what I didn't do was set any expectations, any goals, and I think what I've encouraged people to do when they're thinking about AI is you got to have your systems knowledge in place. I've walked into many a company and say, "Can I see a picture of all your systems that you have?" Let me take you down to the IT guy. He can tell you what we have. It's like, well, first of all, I wanted to see it. So you got to know your systems. You got to know your processes. You got to know what departments interact with each other. And if you don't have these things documented, that's something I highly encourage people to get done today. Because I think the AIs of tomorrow, we're going to have agents that are going to say, hey, tell us how this podcast works. And if you have that systematically laid out, it's going to say, oh, I understand that. I've looked at your podcast. I've looked at other people's podcasts. And this is how it works. And here's where I can see efficiencies. And I can do these things for you. I'm going to need your help here. But then, it can move on from there. And without proper systems and processes, I think some of these companies are going to fall behind when these agents kind of kick into high gear here in the next 8 to 12 months.
Well, yeah, I mean, I can already think about like voice AI agents interviewing people, and then, you have other agents drawing up the diagrams, so you can potentially get your whole stack figured out and documented in less than a day, and the AI just does it and gives you a PDF, and that's a big chunk of work that would take otherwise months to complete, in some cases years. Just some of these companies
exactly.
have ginormous IT footprint, and they don't know what that looks like. They have no idea. They don't even know what people do. Like, they don't have the process documented either. It's like they have like L0. Like, we do something.
And let's just say we do, but then we have 5 different people doing the process, and they each have their own process that they use. Like, do we know which one's more efficient? Why are you not doing the same thing? And then you wonder why. I was working with a client the other day, and there was customers getting discounts on their invoice, and they don't know why that we had a variance of 1, 2, and 5% discounts. They don't know why that was happening, and there's no decision tree in play. So, like, who decided this? How is this working? And, that's percentages of your sales that are just going away because somehow, some way, somebody thought they should get a discount. It's tough.
Especially if you're a smaller company and somebody just like, they're trying to like sweeten the deal and they just give a discount for the sake of giving a discount, or they give too good of a deal, and then it's like, yeah, well, how does that get approved? How do you have and I think AI will act as sort of like the SOP enforcer, where it can actually learn from those SOPs and then tell you, no, you can't do that. That's not part of the policy.
Or at least
yes,
you can. At least it can say, let's take this to your manager and get it approved before we just let it ride, right? I mean, it doesn't mean that it has to stop the process, but it can certainly get an approval here or there from a manager.
Yeah, I think that's key. And so, what other areas have you seen AI agents kind of changing things in, like, especially in the management consulting and the CTO space? How do you think the role the role of CTO will evolve as these agents come in and take over?
What I see happening there is taking, like when you think about the consulting piece, you get a base proposal. I mean, everyone, always goes back to the last proposal, then you do the search and replace the company name. But if you could start to build out like a base proposal for a company and then, apply the learnings in your sales interview process, I think you could really custom tailor these proposals for the company. And, those details matter, right? Because it doesn't seem like it at first, but not only do you have yourself looking a little bit more professional when that happens, but also it can help keep track of those things as we move forward and make sure that everything gets adjusted right. I think you're going to see a lot more project management from AI. There's a lot of integrations in some of these customer or project management platforms. They're just really good at that. How much time is spent in a day on saying, we've seen this, in the US, all the Doge. Give me your 5 bullets that you worked on today, right? Well, like if you're using project management software properly and you're entering the information you're working on, which you should be doing, then it could automatically send some of these emails out to say, this is what got done this week. This is who did it. This is how much time it took. And things like that. I think you'll start to see efficiencies come from these tools and the integration of the tools.
Yeah, and I mean, you can just ask ChatGPT or Claude or Grok to make up 5 things you did last week, and I don't think they will check, right?
Isn't that funny?
That's what Elon Musk was saying. He was like, well, you could have just made it up. All they want is for you to reply. And you could say, well, I did this top secret thing, and I did this top secret thing, and I did this stuff that required clearance, and I did this that requires clearance. And that's it. And that's enough. Okay, that's fine. You're doing something, right?
Yeah.
I mean, all they want to know is, are you doing something? Or are you just collecting a paycheck, right?
Well, yeah, and I think that was the first test is, are you alive? I mean, do you have a pulse? Would you reply back to somewhere in the 3 to 5 bullet point range, right? Like, that's just the one barrier. But, and it's sad that we've gotten to the point that that's what it is. But what I see also happening, and then to take and analyze those points or like, imagine if you could take your Chat GPT and just ask it, hey, ask the project management tool, like, how did we do this week? Did we see any issues with someone struggling somewhere? Even like, let's make it so it's actually good. Well, Tom was struggling this week. It seemed to take him a long time here. Maybe you should check in with him and make sure, A, is the project a problem? B, is Tom having problems on his own? I mean, I just think there's a lot going on that could help. We know mental health is a problem these days, and you want to keep your people healthy. There's so many applications. It just seems almost endless of how we can help make people be better.
Yeah, and it's almost like I've seen a lot of micromanagement applications where they like try to like track your screen time, and they're tracking and I think that's like the worst way to treat people. And it's like, you want people to produce value, and how they produce value is irrelevant. The question is, have they produced enough value for you this week to justify keeping them around? Not have they been pressing buttons on the computer, or like that's what like. But I guess that's college student thinking, right? They come out of college and they want to like track every click. And once you grow up, you're like, yeah, well, let's, like, to your point, this kind of these sort of questions like, what is Tom struggling on? Can we find out how we can help that person improve? Like, are they contributing? Yeah.
Well, and you know how it is. I mean, I always say that I want my database people and I want my network people look like they're doing nothing. Because if the database people and the networking people look like they're doing nothing, that's a great thing. I said, I never, ever want to see the networking people or the database people running in the building, because that means we have a massive problem that they're trying to fix right now. That work is done ahead of time. That work is done when no one's looking, and when they're not excited and when they're bored. That is a beautiful thing. And I think sometimes we think of inactivity as the best method, but when you're talking about network and database people, when they're doing nothing, that means they've done the right things and everything's working right. And that's another opportunity, right, for AI to be taking in data points from your network and saying, yeah, something's not right. I mean, there's a lot of knocking on the door today. Let's figure out who's knocking, and is that normal, and can we stop them from knocking? Because a lot of times when we see an incident report, it's already, the thing has happened as opposed to like starting to happen. And I think we're going to see a lot more preventative work done by these agents, because they can just take in so much more data than we can.
Yes, and to your point, people doing nothing is not necessarily a bad thing, right? And
No.
especially if they've set things up properly and things is running like clockwork, you just don't understand that it's not that they're doing nothing. They organize it in such a way where it seems like they're doing nothing, and
Yeah,
that's
I love that.
yeah. I mean, it's like I know, like when I was in the private sector, I used to come in and I used to, it would be some garbage contract that nobody wanted to do, and I would take it and I would optimize all the things, and then I would be sitting there and I would be doing nothing. Why are you doing nothing? Well, because I've done the work, turned this garbage contract into a great contract, and now I'm just, I'm enjoying what I did, right?
And you can't, that experience is the thing. I mean, and this AI, they don't know anything yet, so like when we can blend an AI with a really experienced person, I think you're going to see this is, you see this a lot more. It's not about AI replacing people, it's AI enhancing people. The
Yes,
combination of those two things, I think, are very, very powerful in business today.
exactly. So, um, now let's talk about a little bit about um I guess your experiences with agents, and I know like you've done other things before you became a fractional CTO. So
Sure.
how does that reflect in your current career?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I'm seeing with agents and the careful is mostly around like the data governance pieces.
Mm,
Um, with data governance, that's kind of these things because these agents don't really know their rules. They don't know where they should start or stop. And I think what I've seen mostly is really getting a grip on what data you have exposed and whom it's exposed to is really important because if you put an AI agent out there that can go out and traverse your directory of files, not all those files are good for everyone. So that's kind of the big thing I'm seeing now is really figuring out because before I think, we used the obscurity of where the file was because someone had to go in and click 7 layers of folders deep to find your trove of, hidden Excel spreadsheets. And now agents just know that it's out there and it can be asked the question of, hey, what was, the classic is what's the CEO's salary? And then it just kicks it right back out because it was in the spreadsheet. So I think, the chief thing that I've been really just been harping on people to do is make sure we understand what is exposed and where is exposed. And when you give an agent maybe admin access to everything, understand that the question that it asks is not coming from your customer service agent. It's coming from that administration access that you gave the agent. So just kind of understanding how those agents work and what data they have access to is very, very important.
Yeah, we've been looking into permission based and clustering for agents like since the beginning because that was
Right.
kind of one of the biggest things because you can have RAG and it indexes everything, but then you don't want everybody to know everything. And you need to have permissions for agents. And
Yeah.
I guess with introduction of things like MCPs and stuff like that, we'll be able to see more like granular permissions and them getting set more naturally.
Yeah.
What other use cases do you foresee in your space that like some developer can start working on and actually build something that will be useful for somebody like yourself?
Well, what I see on the development side is just seems like a lot of, we've had GitHub out there for how long, right now?
Mm,
And it sounds like Copilot, with Microsoft's owning GitHub. People have a large access to data or code that's already existed. And the beauty of GitHub is you can tell how many people have used these things, how popular certain code snippets have been, and then the activity, right? Like the more active a repository is, usually means it's a better repository because more people are using it. So, I think what we're seeing here is where developers can just ask, hey, is there a routine that, can I use this routine for checking, checking the validity of a credit card? What's the best one that's out there? And then, it just seems so efficient right now. I mean, and hopefully it doesn't just end up to be where everybody's using the exact same code, but it sure does seem to make things more efficient. I mean, I know for years and years when I was working on the web, we had these code libraries and we just save them and we'd use those, and then you'd import those libraries for everything. Well, heck, then you were bloating the code so much. that there was so much unused code, but you had it in there because it was in your library, and that was the easiest thing for you to do. Again, back to lazy programmers. But I think that's a beautiful thing. You could take a big piece of code or a big application, say, hey, can we take out all the code that's not used in this at all, and isolate it? I think we're just going to see things become much more efficient, and you can already see how much faster people can program applications by using an AI assistant.
Oh yeah, I mean, I use Cursor all the time, and we are building a lot of enterprise applications like
Yeah.
our company, and you're faster, but it does hallucinate a lot, and there are
Oh yeah.
mistakes, and it can get into these kind of loops where it doesn't understand what you want, and then you can spend hours just asking it for help, and it just doesn't do it, and then you're just frustrated. Like, people are right now obsessed with vibe coding, where they're vibe coding something, and I haven't gotten into vibe coding, and I program every day, and I haven't seen vibe coding in, like, really there. Like, I don't know where, like, there's a lot of hype around it, but it's not there yet. I don't think
Yeah.
so, at least.
I think you still need a great developer. I think, I saw a recent discussion with Mark Zuckerberg, and he thought his best programmers are now going to have these. It's kind of right now, maybe the death of the middle programmer is what it feels like,
Yeah.
where your better programmers are going to have these mid programmers that are AI. And I think you can see that. And, it's probably sad that coding is definitely changing, but I think there's always going to be need for the upper level people. I think that it's probably going to open the door for more low level people, and then maybe that middle level is kind of the ones getting squeezed right now.
Well, even I'm looking right now when I'm hiring, I'm looking for AI first juniors, because I feel like I can pair them with seniors, and they can, juniors will just write code with AI, and seniors will just guide them, and you're getting like extreme value. And this middle level programmer is not worth it, like, money quality wise,
Right.
because they're just like, they're slow. They don't learn as fast. So, like, it's like kind of, we're losing a whole generation of programmers.
Yeah. It reminds me of when we used to hire programmers, and I would always ask them, well, what do you do when you get into a pickle, right? And they would say, well, I'd read a book or this or that. I'm like, why don't you just Google it? Well, that's what I do. It's like, well, just say that, because that's the fastest way to the end, right? And if they're not willing to use AI now, that would be the other, like, if you don't think this is good for you, you probably need to find something else to do, because if you're not using the biggest tool in the toolbox today, it might be hopeless. So
Yeah, and I mean, you have these people that know these complicated code bases, and that used to be their defensibility in the IT sector. But
right,
now I can, like,
exactly,
pull up my Windsurf and say, please study this code base, and it will study it. And I'm like, okay, well, I need to fix this bug, and it will fix it. And I can literally fix a bug on a code that another developer wrote in minutes, if it's not something complicated. Like, there are, like, some really shitty complicated architectures that
right,
developers like to build, and those AI still struggles with. So this academic code with really, really complex inheritance patterns. So they build it in such a way where AI just chokes on it. And I guess that's developer defensibility, where they don't like
that
they,
was just all the Java developers, right?
yeah. Yes. Yeah. I think AI should be pretty good with Java. Do you know, like, are those agents good with Java?
I'm not a Java developer. I just like to make fun of them on any podcast I can, but Java's so structured, you would have to believe that's probably a good construct. I think, I'm assuming where AI is going to struggle a little bit is in these unstructured, code languages, where things are much more free flowing, because it's just, there's so many more options, right? So
Right, right. I think it's framework dependent. So we have Django, for example. When I
right,
ask it Django questions, it solves it perfectly. I don't need to struggle at all. The whole MVC is done. Like, I think
yes,
CEO of Microsoft Satya said, basically, like, MVC, like, it's done. Like, AI can do it. But as soon as you get into this complex, like, UI, and, like, complex, like, flows of data with a synchronous processing or real time, or, like, we do a lot of real time video analytics, and it struggles with it, doesn't understand it, and
yeah,
just, but
it's outside of its box today. Yeah.
yeah, but Still very interesting. Very, very interesting. The way these things are going. Could you imagine, like, 6 months ago, we couldn't have imagined how these agents will overtake. Like, people were talking about it, but it wasn't that obvious. But, like, now it's like.
You start to see more and more, that's for sure.
So, what are your top predictions for 2025? What are we going to see in 2025?
That's a great question. I would say that, first thing that we see is probably, well, the most interesting thing, and maybe I don't know when it's going to happen, but I think I've been disillusioned by what these agents are, and I think, kind of when we think about how APIs work now, I was thinking that I was going to call someone else's agent, or, I thought I was going to call an API, and maybe I'd call your agent. But I think what's going to happen now is I don't know if you've seen the calls or something like, I'm an AI agent and I'm calling to schedule a haircut. Well,
Yes.
I'm an AI agent taking the haircut, and then they start to talk this gibberish. Have you seen that
Yes,
video?
yes, I've seen it.
And I think what we're going to see is like, I need to build my agent for me to know everything about me. So therefore, then the other agents can then take off from there. And I think the multi-threadedness of what will happen after my agent makes the request is what I kind of was having a roadblock with in my mind. But when you start to see that gibberish start to go down, it's like, that it's like, I'm not the expert agent for this, but I know the expert agent, and here they are. We'll just loop them into the conversation. So I think the agent concept is different than what we think it is, because it's not an API. I don't have to write my APIs. I just have to write the agent that knows about me. So it's almost like the inverse of an API, right? I need to write everything about myself. So that agent knows me, knows where my blocks and stops are, so that my agent doesn't violate my own rules. And I think once we do that, I think some point here, maybe at the end of the year, maybe this middle of next year, we're going to see a lot more of this agent to agent, thing. My replication, as close as I can to my mind, is out there handling this stuff for me.
Right, and I think that's basically you at scale. That's
Yeah.
what it is. So we're gonna get ourselves, because like there's deep fakes now. They can speak like us. They can like mimic our like full facial expressions.
Yes.
So they can join these calls, and as long as they know what we know, they can pretty much act as our avatars in
Absolutely.
the real world.
Yep.
And that I think is really, imagine yourself at scale. Like what would you be able to do? Like what would you do if you had 1,000 of you available to you? Then what would be the first thing that you do?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I think of just all the dumb things I do every day. I'd like to just get that handled, I don't want to think about when I need a haircut. It should be like, I looked in the mirror this morning, I saw you need a haircut, so I scheduled one tomorrow at 4 when you were busy, when you had time. That would be wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, all that scheduling, all these appointments, like
back
in
and
Canada,
forth, back and forth, right?
We have like bad healthcare, right? So to
Right.
get a CAT scan, I have to like they booked me in for June, and and I need it like tomorrow. So we have to call every day and check for cancellations until they book you in. It's like socialist healthcare. It's terrible. But if I had an agent that would just call them and would just ask them and hammer them, eventually they would just give me the same day appointment. You got a
Exactly.
cancellation.
And why are we running these, CAT scans or whatever the scans you need? Why do they only run, 8 hours a day? Can't there be one person that monitors 7, CAT scan machines, and you can just go in, and can it just handle the scan? Then we could go all night. I mean, hey, you might be a person that works all day, but you don't mind coming in at 11 o'clock at night.
And I feel like a lot of those technicians can easily be replaced by AI, like MRI technicians or CAT scan technicians. You could literally build an agent or a robot, like one of those like Elon Musk type of robots, and they could sit and they could operate that machinery, and we don't need those people in there. Like,
no,
I mean, there is no value at like low level technical jobs.
Correct.
And those people cost like 100, sometimes 200,000 a year, 300,000 a year. Imagine like how much you could save with these robots, like robot nurses as well.
Yeah.
Like,
well, and then they're already starting to show like the cancer scanning. When they're better, the AI is way better at reading the MRIs. I was watching a show. They put a picture of like a little person's face in artificially into the scan. The doctors and the technicians, they didn't even see it because they were only looking for this other thing, and it's like it was so obvious, And so I think they just this is what our brain does. We tend to look for the things we need, and we don't look for the things we don't. And, I'm thinking about a turkey sandwich instead of trying to figure out if that's a cancerous cell or not, right? I mean, because I'm hungry. They say judges are terrible before lunch because they're hangry. And it's like I do not want to get in front of a hangry judge when something's important on the line.
Well, and eventually we're gonna get to AI judges, and
Right.
I don't know if that's good or bad because I don't know how lenient AI will be. Like in America, you guys have good judges because you can negotiate with that judge, and if the judge likes to, they'll let you off. And it's not like, well, in Canada, I guess too. In Canada, we just have like turnstile system where people commit multiple offenses and they just get out on bail every time. We had a person, they stole a car, they were out on bail. 23 times they got out on bail. They went and they tackled some cop cars with a stolen car. And the judge let them out on bail again. And it's just
Well, humans are really bad at being, non-judgmental and judging weather, right? If it's a really cold day in July, we think it's cold outside when it's, maybe 10 degrees different than it should be, but we're terrible thermometers. And I think, if you were the victim, if you got your car stolen, when you were younger as a judge, you're probably going to go down harder on the people that are stealing cars than the people that are, stealing a TV or something. I think we're just not great at being objective.
yes.
No matter what.
The human factor is a thing. And to your point, any medical results I get, like blood work, I put it through ChatGPT every time, and it just tells me, and I trust it more than I trust my doctor.
Well, in context, right? Like I can't think like a 27-year-old female because I'm a 50-year-old man. I don't know, and I think that's one of the things I love about it. It gives me perspective that I need to see, or need to know. It can help with that. It just has more data accessible than I can.
Yeah. I think that's that. I think that's that. I think that you have a lot more objectivity, and as long as you train those judge AIs to be objective, they will be able to do objective judgments.
Absolutely.
And it can improve police as well. Like imagine AI supervising those police officers, and it's just like they're gonna stop killing people randomly.
Well, and just I'm thinking AR glasses in this instance, like how many misinterpretations of people have we heard of and seen, and
Oh yeah, wasn't there some lady, police lady, who tasered some person to death because she got threatened by them
on
or
the wrong
something?
floor? In the U.S., there was one where she shot somebody. She went home, went into her apartment, and there was somebody in her apartment.
Yeah.
She was on the wrong floor.
Yeah.
I mean,
I made that mistake in one of my apartments, and I come in, and it's different furniture. I'm like, what just happened? Did I just the Matrix got me? No, it's just you're on the wrong floor, buddy. Go one more floor up.
Yeah.
But yeah. To your point, if, for example, these guns that they have or these weapons that they have objective controls in place, like AI controls that don't let them fire when the person just hasn't fully analyzed. If there is a threat to them, and if you see that there is a threatening situation, for sure, kill that guy, whatever. But
right.
if you're just walk in and you see somebody and you perceive them as threatening, but it's just some I don't know, somebody who is not, then it's another thing.
Yes.
And I guess if we can prevent people from,
I mean, anything we can do, right? I mean, the data, they are processing so much data so quickly that it's, we know that's hard to do, and I think there's a lot more to be done there, and I think it'll be interesting to see how the AI and the real world interface with each other. I think it's just an interesting thing.
Well, we are working a lot on that. So we are building these video analytics AIs that analyze stuff based on a policy, and basically they can analyze things in near real time, and they can tell you is this is matching the policy or doesn't match the policy. And in many cases, this could save lives. It can save lives, especially because people are not good at making decisions on the spot. And I think AI will be better at making those decisions in many cases.
But at least, filtering the data down to something that makes a lot more sense versus, giving them 2
some
bullet points instead
phobia
of
or some other thing that you had, and then you're like, oh, I don't like that guy. You
yeah.
kill him, and it's like, well, that's not a good reason to kill somebody. You just not liking them or feel threatened. I mean, is there a threat or is there not? There is a clear definition of a threat there, right? You know,
Absolutely.
So,
Yes.
yeah. Anyways, so any more predictions? So I really like the idea of you at scale. I really think that's extremely impactful, and I think that that's gonna be.
When you look at what Facebook did, they say, they can tell you with 10 likes or dislikes, they know who you are. So like imagine now we create a personality test that can basically become my agent question asker, and then maybe I just get 2 questions a day more and I refine my agent. That would be a great thing. I mean, based on your decision-making process, I'll continue to refine your agent. And then maybe it can even help me be a better person. It can change my habits. I don't like that I do these things. Can you help me with that? I just think it's kind of like that. If you think about what we talk about with these, with the coders, like the assistant to the coder, I think I could use an assistant in my life to make me a better person. I think overall we're good people. We just get in times maybe make bad decisions, and so
Yeah, and
that's the big one. And then just I don't know, the mundane things that I do all day long that I know I'm quote unquote making decisions on. If that agent could just handle that, I would love that.
yeah, and I think that's where it's going. So our AI digital twin is coming, and we were talking to some person, and she is actually partnering in the Middle East to some telecoms where they'll ship it to you as part of your cell phone subscription. They'll ship you this AI digital twin that will learn based on your interactions.
Yeah,
I think that's interesting.
it's pretty amazing. Yeah.
But yeah. So, anyways, Tom, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. I think it was an insightful conversation. Hopefully, our guests and our listeners feel the same.
Reach out to me on LinkedIn. That's usually the easiest way to get in contact. Just search Tom Altman. You'll see this shining face right here, and I'd love to keep the conversation going if anyone wants to talk more.
Yeah.